Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today over your lunch, or if it's still morning. I am going to cover a lot of information over the next 30 minutes. And so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think I opened up the waiting room so that people can just pop in as we're going. But as I dove down the rabbit hole of this interaction between what's going on with our hormones, and not just sex hormones, but insulin and cortisol and sex hormones um, and thyroid, there's this really strong interaction. And it's something that a lot of the ladies that I work with are noticing changes in, including myself. I think for me, it definitely started back when I started getting hypothyroid symptoms. I was noticing changes in my skin after going on birth control. I think a lot of women get what's called a pregnancy mask, right? This hyperpigmentation, and it just sort of starts to add up over the years with looking in the mirror and being like, what the heck? Where do those lines and wrinkles come from? I don't feel like I look like I feel on the inside. So that's where we're going today. I'm have a ton of information, so I'm definitely recording this so you can rewatch it. And if you have questions about any of the labs or products or anything that we talk about, feel free to reach out or book a root cause breakthrough call with me at chatwithsara.com, because there's a lot we're going to talk about. The other thing I do want to just clarify, though, is that I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. I am not an esthetician or skincare expert, but I just want to share with you the research that I've been following and just get you excited about some of the things that we can do to impact the health of our skin, as well as some exciting compounds and things that are coming up that I think that you guys might be interested in learning about. So at the end of the day, as hormones change, right, especially when we're talking about perimenopause and menopause, we're talking about declining estrogen and progesterone, and that shifts our testosterone, cortisol, DHEA. And this has a huge impact on our skin's actual structure, its turnover, the hydration that it holds, and that plumpness and firmness, the elasticity, and its ability to repair itself. So it directly affects collagen synthesis and oil production. So you might notice that it's either drier than it used to be, kind of looks a little deserty, or you might be popping up with some oily or acne prone areas that never were even an issue during your teenage years. So, and then we're talking about inflammation too, because that directly leads to kind of the dryness, the dullness, the sagging, the acne flares, and then a few things that you might be really surprised to learn about. So the first kind of an overview before we dive into the top 10 things that we're going to be considerations for today is really testosterone. Now, this is a big player in collagen synthesis. And it's also why men have about 25% thicker skin than women. So we can actually apply testosterone or DHEA topically. It's not very common, but also things like that's what vitamin A retinol creams do. Testosterone tends to get overlooked, but it's actually the most abundant hormone for women as well. And it helps with the libido, vaginal tissue, bladder health, anxiety, depression, memory and verbal scores, healthy hair, and healthy skin. But in addition to being heart protective, right, for blood sugar, cholesterol, body fat, and autoimmune. So it's something we don't want to overlook. And then, of course, loss of estrogen. That one is one that gets a lot of attention. That plays a huge role. When we lose that, we lose firmness, we lose hydration. Another collagen player, not to mention controlling inflammation. Estrogen keeps inflammation in check and autoimmunity in check, gives us lush, supple skin, both on our facial skin, vaginal skin, brain tissue. And so all of those tend to go all together. So if you're losing lushness in one area, it's more likely you're losing lushness in other areas too. So typically it acts like a natural Botox, and you can apply it topically too. So we're going to talk about a couple of exciting compounds coming down the line. I'm finally able to find some that did not have to be compounded by a compounding pharmacy that is still medical grade. So, and then thyroid hormone, as I mentioned, as we become hypothyroid and lose thyroid function, it definitely impacts skin and hair. And then finally, one area that I have been surprised to learn about is head injuries. And I am not only an ApoE4 genetic carrier, I have had multiple head injuries and head traumas. And so I'm noticing this. I started asking a lot of my clients, and I'm noticing this pattern where any kind of head trauma can actually lead to this dysregulation of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. It's kind of like the command center for hormone production of estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, thyroid, DHEA, and growth hormone. And so these are all key for collagen, hydration, skin repair. And so, plus kind of this putting your body on this sympathetic nervous system hypervigilance, hyperinflammation state. So, that being said, we'll come back to all of these later. Um, Please feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat if you have questions along the way. Otherwise, let's dive in. So the first one that we talked about was declining estrogen. Now, this is one that typically after progesterone starts to go down, estrogen jumps on this wild roller coaster, but that leads to loss of collagen and elasticity. So there's a lot we can do from a nutrition perspective. We can support it through consumption of collagen supporting foods, things like bone broth or gelatin, or especially when you pair it with citrus rich foods, vitamin C rich foods like citrus, broccoli, bell peppers, but also like things like berries, eggs, organic soy phytoestrogens, and then strength training. We can't overlook the power of strength training because that stimulates growth hormone and collagen. So we can supplement with collagen peptides. It's more bioavailable if you pair it alongside vitamin C. And then of course, zinc is really good for skin and wound repair. So topically though, there's some interesting things. I mean, obviously you've probably heard of vitamin A retinoids, but there's some peptides that are coming down the pipeline. Now, peptides are protein sequences. You've probably heard of them with things like GLPs, but there are copper peptides, for example, that help with skin repair. They help with brightening. They help with collagen production that you can apply topically. One of the compounds that I found actually has the copper peptides and a safe variety of estrogen in it. So I'll be watching for that one and sharing more on that one when it comes. There's peptides like BPC 157. That one is kind of, they're calling it the soccer mom hormone because everyone knows about it. It's kind of a foundational one, but it's really important for growth factor, for collagen. But because estradiol is kind of the safest form of estrogen that you can apply topically. And you'll notice like a plumpness almost right away. So women lose about 30%. We lose 30% of our collagen between perimenopause and menopause during those years. And so estriol can actually restore both collagen and elastin. And so the sooner the better, as with bioidentical hormone replacement, same with topical estriol, the sooner the better, sooner we can slow down that process and in terms of aging and skin. And it's weak. It's a weak estrogen and non-proliferative and so safe for everyone, technically including men. Number two is oil production. So you probably noticed like some fine lines. I know whenever I go to Arizona, I'm like, whoa, I feel like I aged 10 years overnight. But it's like in general, we've got more lines and wrinkles, and it's just not bouncing back as fast. And so estrogen decline brings that sebum production with it, kind of the oil production that we want for that supple skin. And so while testosterone fluctuates, that also causes mixed, kind of like that combination of dry and then breakouts. Then we bring into the mix thyropause, which over 40 or with autoimmune conditions, we start to get trouble converting the free T4 over to free T3, and that is the active thyroid hormone. So that goes down. That directly contributes to dry and dull skin. Not to mention like loss of hair, thin brittle hair, losing your outer eyebrows. But from a nutrition perspective, we want to be sure that we are including ample amounts of protein. So I'm saying at least 90 to 100 grams a day and lots of healthy fats. So like omega-3 fats, think wild salmon, chia, flax, all the smash fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, or a really good high quality EPA, DHEA, omega-3 fish oil. You want to make sure it's CO2 or cold water extracted because we don't want to bring in more rancid fats. And the majority of them on the market are rancid. So, and then avocado, olive oil, alongside digestive enzyme support, because we want to make sure we're breaking those foods down and not allowing them to contribute to more inflammation, more food reactivities, and more gut pathogen overgrowth. Now, supplementing with those can be a great addition for most people for bringing inflammation down and creating more supple skin. And then things like topically looking at like hyaluronic acid creams or even omega-3, omega-6 combos you can apply topically. There's a product I like called Body Bio Balance Oil that helps to sort of maintain that subcutaneous skin fat that we want. But especially if you combine it with like your regular skin cream, it can be really good for just helping boost that that skin fat that we want. Now, topical estriol also, as I mentioned, has a ton of research. And then Young Goose is a product line that I've been following because they've got some really interesting compounds coming out, like Exoin, which actually changes the structure of water in our skin, and then Aquexel, which seems to be pretty pricey, but it actually changes the expression of hydration genes like hyaluronic acid. So if you want to go internally, those are some interesting things to be watching. Now, number 3 is that collagen loss gets accelerated by cortisol, stress hormones, and blood sugar. No surprise there, right? What doesn't? But at the end of the day, what happens is that this chronic cortisol elevation, and that can come from stress, it can come from poor sleep, poor diet, high blood sugar, some sort of chronic low-grade inflammation or infection. All of these speed up the breakdown of collagen. And even as I mentioned, I've been studying the impact of head trauma or TBI or concussion, and it unleashes this gut-brain barrier permeability where the inflammation opens up, hits the bloodstream, goes into the brain, and it just like creates this nervous system getting stuck in fight or flight mode. It spikes your cortisol and keeps it higher for longer. It leads to hormone imbalances because it messes with the hormone production center of your brain. So I may have to do a whole separate training on that. But some action steps we can take are, of course, stress management practices, just weaving in these little moments throughout your day of mindfulness, of prayer, of deep belly breathing, of vagus nerve stimulation. So like singing or gargling, being out in nature, getting natural light, and a regular sleep-wake cycle is really, really important. You can add in some adaptogenic herbs, things that blunt that HPA axis, that stress response. So like ashwagandha, holy basil, rhodiola, and then minerals. I'm a huge fan of minerals because, for example, I like to get women started on something like Beam Minerals because it's just a combination of 70 different trace minerals that so many of us are depleted in because of stress or poor absorption or the soil. And then just bringing that on board, but especially copper, selenium, and zinc seem to be the standouts when it comes to minerals for your skin. So the next thing, number 4, is slower cell turnover. So you probably have mentioned like you heal a little bit slower. Skin cell turnover it goes from about 28 days, so about once a month, to over 40 days as we age and as our hormones decline through perimenopause and menopause. So this really steep estradiol and progesterone drop, especially in late perimenopause, is really what leads to all of these symptoms, from hot flashes to like more crepey, thin skin to urine leakage and increased UTIs. And as I mentioned, if we're losing the lushness of the tissue, it's not just in our facial skin, it's in our brain and our vaginal and urinary tract as well. So it's something we want to be mindful of. But we see this like hyper aging period, and it seems to be in our early 40s, around 43, 44, and again at age 60. So all of our lifestyle choices that we've made, combined with our genes and our diet, for better or for worse, seem to catch up with us and sort of stack up on each other around that time. So I'm always like, oh man, I'm so sorry, skin, for what I put you through in my teens and 20s. So But there's a lot we can do too. Our skin cells are still turning over. Still a lot we can do. So things like gentle exfoliation and massage, or sweating, things like exercise or sauna are really helpful with improving that turnover. And then loads of antioxidants. So you can do it topically, or of course, things like we talk about eating the rainbow. So especially um, vibrantly pigmented fruits and veggies, ECGC and green tea, turmeric, berries, just basically eating the rainbow is really good for your skin. And then red light therapy is one that a lot of people ask me about. I did dig into the research, and there seems to be a lot of promising research out there in terms of stimulating collagen, reducing wrinkles, healing acne and scars. But there seems to be more research needed to really confirm its effectiveness. So, in the meantime, make sure you're getting your natural red light exposure through the sunshine. That's essentially what we're trying to recreate with these devices, especially first thing in the morning for a host of reasons. And then prioritize deep sleep. Cell repair is the highest during deep sleep. And I know this is also the years where sometimes sleep can be hard to come by, but it is so critical for skin health, blood sugar, everything, especially that 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. block, not the 12 to 2 like we originally thought. It seems to be a little bit earlier hours, but at the end of the day, make sure you're maintaining like a consistent sleep wake time. That's according to a Fitbit study, that seems to be the number one factor of good sleep. So that we can control. And then 5 is inflammation and glycation. And so this directly leads to loss of firmness and radiance. So we're talking about blood sugar instability, whether it's too high or too low. There's hypoglycemia too. And then we're also talking about charred foods that accelerate glycation. It's kind of like this cross-linking with your collagen. And so what we can do is, of course, just coming back to an unprocessed, low glycemic whole foods diet that's not going to spike or drop blood sugar, not going super long stretches, but also not eating really high foods that are going to hit the bloodstream hard and fast. Prioritizing protein and fiber, especially at the start of the day, the start of the meal. And then ages, that's those advanced glycated end products, aptly named ages, because they cause this cross-linking and this collagen and DNA damage. And so think about, we do a lot of smoking at our house and smoking meat on the grill. And so anytime you do eat something charred or grilled, blackened, or smoked, always make sure to have something green with it to help to neutralize these damaging compounds. So think leafy greens and herbs, even avocado, things like that can help to neutralize them. And then, of course, supplements would be like fish oil, berberine and chromium to keep blood sugar stable, and then antioxidants like alpha lipoic acid, resveratrol, curcumin. And of course, regular exercise is going to help with insulin sensitivity, which speeds the aging process, right? If we are cooking in high sugar, that's going to be speed the aging process. So especially strength training and walking around meals. And then number 6 is thinning skin, like the epidermis layer, and that weakened skin barrier function. So we don't just have a gut barrier or a brain barrier, we have a skin barrier too. And so reduced lipids or reduced fats means that the skin loses that moisture faster. It lower testosterone makes our skin thinner too, as we talked about. That's why men have 25% thicker skin. So make sure you're strength training and prioritizing plenty of protein to help naturally maintain levels of testosterone. We can test these as well to see where you're at and where you feel optimal at. But essentially, there are skin barrier creams like ceramides and things like that, but you can also consider topical or supplemental like a DHEA plus. This one actually helps to bring up testosterone in women. It's not so helpful in men, but we use a chrysin, which helps drive it down the testosterone pathway, because that can go to estrogen or testosterone. But vitamin A, retinol creams, hydration and electrolytes and minerals are really, really important. And then I'm a huge fan of mouth taping. And I was actually reading that if you sleep with your mouth open, if it just naturally sort of drops open, you lose about 30% of your moisture and water. So every little shift helps. So if you haven't tried it, try it. It could help with sleep. It can help with oxygenation and moisture loss. So, and of course, like zinc and biotin can help with repair as well as plenty of protein. And then also making sure your thyroid is functioning optimally because that actually improves your neck and your jawline. Um, and that can be one thing that we can look at, not only for thyroid health, but for bone health. And as I mentioned, mixing up like that body biobalance oil, which is an omega-3, omega-6 combo, it's technically oral, but there's no flavor or anything in it. So you can mix it with your cream, especially for people who are losing weight quickly, like on a GLP-1 or calorie restriction or just aging in general. That subcutaneous fat goes really quickly, and your jawline is starkly affected, and that directly contributes to kind of these jowls and sagging skin. And so you can also do things like chewing mastic gum for 5 minutes a day, or Amazon has these jaw exercisers just to like load up that bone and strengthen that muscle. So interestingly, I mean, your jaw shape and strength has a lot to do with um, your face. We just don't think about it that often. And then low pregnenolone and low DHEA, they tend to like rise and fall together. Both of these hormones make you feel like you can't handle stress anymore. You're exhausted, no libido, dry skin, vaginal dryness, insulin resistance. Your skin loses elasticity, gets thinner, depression, anxiety. Both of these hormones are brain protective. And so they're really important for brain health as well as your adrenals, stress resilience, longevity, all things that we can easily test and restore if if you feel like that's playing into aging faster than you want to. Now, number 7 is acne, and we thought we got over this in our teens, right? But these fluctuating androgens, which are basically the male hormones like testosterone and DHEA, that can fluctuate a lot, especially in perimenopause, and it can trigger breakouts, especially in the jawline or along your chin. So we want to make sure we're balancing blood sugar. Again, a lot of these recommendations are going to check a lot of the boxes. So reducing dairy, because that does seem to cause more sebum production, some food sensitivities, and processed carbohydrates again. But rule out yeast, fungus, candida, mold exposure. That can be a big deal. Processed meat, wheat, and dairy seem to be big players, kind of like the traditional Western diet, with acne. And then low stomach acid is really common as we age, with hypothyroidism, with any sort of inflammation in the gut. So we want to make sure that we are taking digestive support and breaking down our foods, because hydrochloric acid gets lower and lower. And that's so important for not allowing bacteria to overgrow, to break down fats and proteins so we can use them and keep the inflammation, systemic inflammation, and skin inflammation down. You might also consider for this red light therapy, sauna, detox, lymphatic support. Keep things moving and flowing so they don't get clogged up. Number 8 is slower wound healing, increasing sensitivity. You've probably seen older people that get, they hit something and their skin breaks so easily and it just doesn't heal. So reduced estrogen slows microcirculation and repair, and so does chronic inflammation. So does low-grade infection. And that also stiffens the vasculature that carries around the oxygen and the nutrients all around our bodies, from our head to our toes, from our brain to our skin. So we want to get regular exercise to boost blood flow, to boost glow and detox. Plenty of protein. Vitamins A, C, and zinc are really important for wound repair. And then think nitric oxide rich foods, things that carry that oxygenation. So like beets and beet greens, pomegranates, really any leafy greens are going to help with that. And then there's peptides again, like the BPC 157, or combining it with KPV can really help collagen synthesis, nitric oxide, lowering inflammation, healing the gut, the tissues, the ligaments. You don't take it long term. It's just a short term thing, but it originally was isolated from the GI tract, and it kind of helps your body to restore and repair kind of from the root cause. And so number 9 is sun damage, something that my poor skin dealt with as I was throughout my 20s and 30s, I was an Ironman athlete. I did not use sunscreen. I was swimming in the ocean, biking all day, and just suddenly my skin stopped liking the sun. But UV accelerates like collagen loss and pigmentation changes, especially as estrogen drops. So yes, a good clean sunscreen is important, but you also want to make sure you're getting unexposed, unblocked exposure about 15 minutes a day, and then eating loads of antioxidants. So specifically vitamin C, like the fat soluble vitamins A, C, D, and E, kind of protect you from UV from the inside out. They're antioxidants that protect your skin against sun damage. And sun is so important. So we want to find that balance. And then the final one is just an overview of like holistic macronutrients, minerals and micronutrients, stress management, sleep, moderate exercise. If I could boil it down, that's probably the most important thing. Hormone testing, blood testing, knowing your levels. You can consider bioidentical hormone replacement or herbal options, things like black cohosh or vitex, chaste tree or maca, or adaptogenic herbs and minerals. And then minerals are really important. They're like this unsung hero for making collagen and elastin, for making digestive enzymes, for keeping blood sugar stable, for making brain neurotransmitters. So I like to always start with a broad spectrum mineral, because we need the raw materials to even make all these things. For our bones too, our bones are made of half collagen and half minerals. And so sometimes if you're noticing your jaw is shrinking or your teeth are changing or your gums are receding, that can affect the look of your face skin, but it's also an early indicator of bone loss. And so we need to be, it's like this sneaky low grade thing that we don't know is happening until we break a bone or something years later. But we want to start with minerals, eating collagen, eating protein, and doing all the things that we talked about just to keep skin hydrated, youthful, flexible, and of course, supporting your body across the board with so many different things that are going to keep you feeling and looking young and healthy and good for so many years to come. So thank you so much for attending. I think I packed it all in right in the nick of time. We've got a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions about what's going on with their skin, any supplements or tests that we talked about, now is the time.
Hey,
Otherwise,
Sara.
I'll be sending out the replay as well. Yes.
Okay, I have a question. That was so great. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad
Good
you came.
information. Um, what about under eye bags? Because I found just a couple, 43, 42, that's when they started, and I've never
Yeah.
had them before, and I feel like it has to be hormone related or something, not sleep. So,
Yeah. No, and I think I start to see that with you start to get almost like fatty deposits, but it can be like bone, it can be collagen, it can be often associated with something with like sluggish gallbladder and liver. I'm seeing that a lot. So like that's where the microcirculation, the gentle massage can really help. And then from there, there are surgical procedures, but I would say anything that can lower the inflammation. I would even start with that topical estriol that I mentioned, because it has also the copper peptides in it. That's You're going to notice a difference. If you want some immediate gratification, it's going to plump up your skin right away while you work on the longer term things going on with optimizing your sleep and circulation, detox, liver and gallbladder. If you need help looking over any of those markers, I'm always happy to look over those with you and kind of your unique situation. So
thank you.
yeah.
It's good to know. Good to know it's not, I don't know, that it
The
can be
upkeep is harder and harder, that's
dear
for
God.
sure.
Yes.
And we don't want to do things that are going to damage our bodies and our brains and our skin in the long term, right? Like as I mentioned, like estrogen cream and estriol can be like a natural Botox. That's what we produce.
Hmm.
That's why when we're in our 20s and 30s, we have natural tight skin. And then as we lose it, it gets more wrinkly. But injecting Botox is actually Clostridium botulism. It's like basically it's a neurotoxin. And it's kind of scary, the research that's coming out in terms of the damage that it can do to our brain. And I'm paying attention because, especially for someone who's high Alzheimer's risk, plus multiple head injuries, I mean, there's always things we do, like, as women, dyeing our hair and whatnot. But if we can reduce risks along the way, there's a trade-off too of keeping our bodies healthy and not paying for it down the road. So I think I
Yeah.
had a question.
And
Yeah.
just final thought is when you ask a doctor about the under eye bags, they don't make those connections. So I appreciate that you do.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we got to zoom out and look at the whole body. And for everyone, it's a little bit unique, but I would say those are the things that I'm seeing as most common contributors to that. So kind of darkening under eyes and kind of puffiness there. Um, Anne was asking plant-based bioidentical hormone oils and creams from Glow Wellness. So she's noticed an improvement in mood and energy. So there's such a wide variety. So you need to be careful of, I've tested for people and they're either getting extra hormones that they weren't bargaining for, or they're not in there at all, or it has to be such a thin, fine liposome that it can actually cross the skin barrier and get into the bloodstream. And there aren't a lot on the market that do. Another one to look into that I really like is Quicksilver Scientific has a line, and they have probably some of the smallest, if you look at it under a microscope, the most well absorbed directly into the bloodstream, either through the skin or orally um, under the tongue. So, but make sure you might want to test. But if you feel the difference, I've had people go on wild yam cream, and we know that it can't be absorbed or turned into progesterone, but they feel better. So maybe they're getting some of it, or maybe there's a component of, like, our mind is powerful medicine. It truly produces powerful neurochemicals too. So if it's working for you, great. If you're curious, I'm always a fan of testing too. So I test myself all the time. I'm my own guinea pig. So if you have questions,